Hey there, it's Dr. Karen, and today I wanted to talk about language screening tools. Now, I have gotten the question before about what is the best language screening tool. And so usually the context in which this question is asked is that an SLP wants to know, how do I do a screening to make sure that I am identifying the students who need full language evaluations so that you're not missing kids, but also so that you're not doing a ton of evaluations with students who maybe don't necessarily need to get a full evaluation. So I appreciate that question because it was something that came up a lot for me when I was a school SLP. And here's the question, or here's the answer that I think a lot of people aren't going to like, which is that there really aren't a lot of very good language screening tools out there as far as screenings and tests. Now, I say this about evaluations as well, but really when we're thinking about a screening, we have to stop thinking about screenings as a test. Really, a screening is a process. And the other thing that I think people need to realize is that we don't necessarily need an official test score to indicate that it's okay for us to move forward with an evaluation. If you know, based on the information that you have, that a student needs an evaluation, you can just move forward with it. You don't have to get some definitive test score that tells you it's okay to do an evaluation. So how I would handle this when I was in the school systems is that I did sometimes use the Self-4 screener was the one that I often used if I really felt like I needed a criterion score, but I often didn't really feel like that gave me great information. So what I usually did was more of a portfolio approach. So what would happen in the district that I was in was that we did this district-wide benchmark assessments in math and reading. And the kids who were in the bottom 20% would often qualify for interventions. And a lot of times they would start getting the interventions. And sometimes kids would pop out as needing some assistance, especially in the area of literacy. And if there was a student who had been identified as being in the bottom 20% and was getting some intervention in the area of phonological awareness, and then a teacher referred that student to the problem-solving team and they had concerns about academics, a lot of times that was enough information for me to know that I probably should look into something. Now, sometimes I would do a screening, but a lot of times if there was enough information, especially if the psychologist was also looking into doing some academic testing, that was enough for me to move forward with an eval without formally needing to screen them because I had a ton of data. I had the benchmark screenings. A lot of times the teachers were bringing academic information and then they also had their report about what they were seeing in the classroom. And sometimes those students were also getting assistance from the reading and Title I teachers, and they often did assessments as well. And typically they were in the area of literacy, but there were a lot of language skills that were worked into that as well. And to me, that was enough. So sometimes if I felt like I needed more information, I might go into the classroom and talk to the teachers, ask for specific information. Maybe I might ask to see some of their written work. I might ask to see some of their assessments in literacy. I might even look at math if there were a lot of language-based things going on in math, which sometimes happens. And so I would just go in and start investigating. Now, I do have a tool that I use to do that. It's called the Academic Language Skills Rating Scale. It's not a formal assessment. It's something that I just created to kind of help structure those interactions and help me to make sure that I could stay focused when I was going in and talking to teachers. And I did create a little bit of a rating scale out of it so that I could get an objective score, but it isn't something that's norm reference. It's just something that I use to kind of organize the data that I was collecting. So that's one tool that I did use. But really, we want to stop feeling like we need this test that tells us that we can move forward. You can gather information in another way. And a lot of times, if a student's already being referred, you might already have enough information that you can move forward with an evaluation. Federally, there isn't a federal guideline that says that we need a test. A parent can actually make a request for an evaluation and you don't have to screen them in that case. If a parent is formally making a request for an evaluation, you can go ahead and do that. And then you can also go ahead and initiate that evaluation based on the information that you already have. So yes, there isn't a perfect language screener. I don't know that there ever will be. There are some out there that can give you some information, but really your best approach is going to be more of a portfolio approach, or thinking of this as a process by which you're gathering information so that you can move forward. Remember, a screening isn't an evaluation. It's just, are there any things that are making you raise your hand and saying, hey, we need to look into this a little bit further. So that's how I think about screenings. You don't necessarily need to have that formal test to give you permission to move forward, especially if you know that a student might need an evaluation. So with all that being said, I do have a tool that I use to help gather that information. And it actually is part of the manual that comes with my Language Therapy Advanced Foundations course for SLPs. In Language Therapy Advanced Foundations, I walk through my 5-component framework for building the language skills needed for reading and writing and vocabulary that students need in order to be successful in school. So if you have students who have those language processing issues that are impacting their ability to comprehend what they read, if they're struggling to get the big picture, if you know that their vocabulary skills aren't where they should be, if you're noticing that they have issues with grammar and syntax, then a lot of times they're just not processing the language that is coming up, especially in a lot of those more difficult academic tasks, especially if you're kind of like, I know that they're not getting it and I'm not exactly sure where to intervene. And there are so many different skills that I could be doing. Language Therapy Advanced Foundations gives you an evidence-based framework and allows you to have a set of strategies that you can cycle through that are going to build those skills that students need to succeed. And so within that program, I do give you some tools for collecting data so that you can get a nice complete picture of where your students are functioning. And that is something that comes with the manual, and that includes some of my screening tools. And again, remember, they're more like processes than formal tests, even though I do show you how to use data from formal assessments in the course. So to get more information, you can go to drkarenspeech.com/language therapy. That's going to be the course enrollment page where you can get all the information about what's included. Again, that's drkarenspeech.com/language therapy. And I'll also post a link below this video.